So to start off, I have a few questions. Question number one, Webjoint occupies an interesting space in the world of cannabis software. How did Webjoint come to be?
First of all, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be here. Story of Webjoint. Yeah, I wasn't in the cannabis space all of my life. The beginning, the intention wasn't to be in the cannabis space. My business partner and I, Chris, we had a company and we were making websites for people. And Chris came to me. He says, "Hey, this guy owns a dispensary. He wants us to build him a website." Yeah, I guess it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And I was just like, sure, we're a web design company. Like, why not? That was our first step into cannabis. At the time, there was no such thing as like a web design company specifically for the cannabis industry. And so that's what we did. We pivoted and we said, you know what, let's pick a niche. And so we did that for a while. And we got to know a lot of dispensary owners as a result of making websites for them and kind of started to see the pain points and the problems they had on the day-to-day while running their business. And that was when we had the brilliant idea of, hey, why don't we make a software and that'll solve their pain point. And that is how Webjoint came to be.
Cool. Well, that's awesome to know a little bit about your history and how you came to be. My next question, one of the most exciting things for us at EzHire is being able to employ people in an industry that in part didn't exist a few years ago. You've been employing people in this space for almost 6 years, as you said. And that has to be a little surreal when you think about where cannabis was a short time ago. What is that like, and how has the type of candidate you've seen changed in that time?
It's been surreal just to watch the industry grow and change in general. It doesn't just stop at the candidates and employees. It also kind of pertains to the business owners as well. It's vastly different than what it was before. And people worked in the cannabis industry for one reason and one reason only, was because they love cannabis, right? So a lot of the stoner stereotypes definitely involved in the industry back then. But as it fully legalized and, more so legitimized, a lot of people from other industries started flooding in, and they looked at cannabis and that industry as just like a new young industry that has the potential to be a booming industry, and they get to join it at the ground floor. And then people also started to realize like like your head of marketing doesn't need to be a stoner to be a good head of marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. My history is I've worked in HR in so many different companies, where it was pharmaceutical, a tech company, or just a staffing agency, and it's really, your experience can work in so many different industries. What advice would you give a new business owner as a seasoned industry entrepreneur who has worked across multiple industries?
First and foremost, like, this industry is not easy, right? There's a lot of bad in this industry. It's not like, walk in the park where there's money everywhere, like people just assume. One of the main things that gets in our way is just legislation to begin with. You need to get a license in every state that you want to operate in. So even though you could grow it perfectly fine, you sell it perfectly fine in California, that doesn't mean you could sell it in Arizona, and so on and so forth, right? So I don't need a license myself because we're just a software company, but it still is a barrier to entry for us to get into other states because the state legislation is so different from state to state. Like everything from the taxes to the way they manage their inventory, and really like every aspect of the business. And then not to add to that, let's say you got your license, you went through the whole arduous process and you're fully licensed, you spent all that money, and now you're ready to open for business. There's a ton of competition on top of that. And I think this is just good business advice in general. So for one, you want to differentiate yourself. Peter Thiel famously says competition is for losers. Why? Because it eats up all your profits, right? So the biggest companies in the world, the best companies in the world, are ones that face little competition, like Google search engine or Facebook and so on and so forth. So if you're going to enter into the cannabis industry, don't just open another cannabis brand. There's thousands out there. Don't just open another dispensary. There's thousands out there, right? You want to think of ways that you could differentiate yourself. And then the last point is just being agile, right? So there's a lot of curveballs that the cannabis industry is going to throw at you.
What is your favorite cannabis related movie and why?
First movie that popped into my mind was Friday. The whole plot is like he smoked too much of Debo's cannabis, and he needs to like figure that out and like figure out how he's going to get the money for it.
I like that. Okay, awesome. And how can people find you online?
I would say, go to webjoint.com, WEBJOINT. If you want to check out our software, you can follow our Instagram account of the business is webjoint _ Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I had a great time getting to know you and a little bit more about Webjoint.
Definitely. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.